Hello, my fellow nations. Today I am joined by
Morgan.
Introduce yourself. What do you do? What's your channel?
Oh boy, I make videos about like how to do activism, like reproductive justice and queer activism, and like chronic illness, like mental illness and stuff like that.
Cool. In January, I made a video saying that I was going to speak out about invisible illness, so today Morgan is here to help me do that. We are going to talk about food stuff, because I have something called eosinophilic esophagitis, which is a swallowing disorder. And what's your relationship with food?
I have avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, which some people call selective eating disorder, which is it's kind of like a fear of food. So like we're similar in that we have like restricted diets and stuff, but they probably come from different things.
So it took me, I wasn't diagnosed with eosinophilic esophagitis, which we're just going to call EE from now on, because as you can tell, it's quite a mouthful, which is ironic because it's a swallowing disorder.
I was going to say that if you did.
I was diagnosed with EE my senior year of high school, and prior to that, I had like a whole bunch of issues, and I would tell my doctor that, oh, it's hard to swallow, is that normal? And one of my doctors told me, chew carefully. Yeah, so what eosinophilic esophagitis is, oh, I said I was going to call it EE. Oh well, what eosinophilic esophagitis is there are eosinophils in your body which attack things to try and protect you. However, they don't belong in your esophagus. And they like to come into my esophagus and sort of like surround food or something, so different food pathogens trigger them coming into my esophagus. So I had to go on an elimination diet in order to get like officially diagnosed and get endoscopies and stuff. So I eliminated the 8 main allergens, which are wheat, soy, peanuts, tree nuts, fish, shellfish, eggs, and milk. So I eliminated all of that from my diet for a month, and then I was slowly allowed to introduce things back in, and it was like, wow, this is what swallowing feels like for normal people once you like eliminate some things. And I also had to get an endoscopy, and they took biopsies to see how many eosinophils were in my throat or whatever.
Wow.
The answer is supposed to be 0, and mine was in like the 40s or something at one point, and that we don't want that. We want it to try to be 10 or below, because 0 is the goal. And so now I have a med that helps to keep that down so that I can occasionally eat other foods, but then there are some that are just like completely vetoed, like eggs. And so it's a long process, but it finally got there. So what was your diagnosis process like?
So I originally got diagnosed with sensory integration disorder, which is when I'm super sensitive to textures. Like I used to have a really hard time wearing socks, for example, or I couldn't wear any shirts with like a tag on the back. And that also translated into me having a hard time eating foods because of the texture of the food and how it made me feel. And then that led into a diagnosis of having a feeding disorder, which is no longer in the DSM. It's now called the other thing I mentioned before.
ARFID.
Yeah. I have an extremely restricted diet, so like I only eat basically like bread and cheese, and I just started eating like eggs.
Oh, congrats, I can't have those.
Yeah.
So what is it like navigating the world? Like, how do you go out to a restaurant? What is your process if you're forced into a situation where you have to be eating out with someone?
So usually I ask for the kids menu because those foods tend to be milder. Like the reason I like bread and cheese is because those are mild foods, so it doesn't have an extreme like taste or texture that would trigger my eating disorder. And if I feel too embarrassed to ask for the kids menu, I just look. Like usually I'll go look and see if they have sandwiches, and then like I'll just get something that resembles something that I eat, or like I'll get nothing and share fries with someone, say I'm not hungry, worst case scenario.
So when I go to restaurants, it can be quite a process, because usually I will say, do you have an allergy menu? Because some places have an allergy menu, or if they don't have a full allergy menu, they'll have either notifications if it's vegan or if it's gluten-free, because a lot of gluten-free is a fad that people do. And I'm like, well, it helps me because I can't have gluten either. I can occasionally have gluten, depends on the cycle of my meds. So when I go to restaurants, it's very difficult because I can't eat eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, broccoli, zucchini, fish, shellfish, pineapples, peppers. I'm missing main. Gluten. There's a big list of them.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult for me to go to a restaurant because I'll go somewhere and I'll sometimes I have to talk to a chef or something.
Yeah.
So on my class trip in senior year, we went to Disney World. And Disney's great. They have a menu that has the 8 main allergens and then what you can get if you have that allergy. Now, I couldn't have any of those things at that time because senior year was when I was going through the elimination diet and actually getting diagnosed.
Yeah.
And so for a week straight, I would have a plain chicken breast with salt and pepper as the seasoning.
Oh, no.
And they gave me some fruit on the side because we had these like meal cards to use for school. And so we would give them to them, and I'd be like, so I have allergies, and they say, oh, what are they? And they would put them on the into my order so that the chef would see that. And so on the receipt, it just had a giant list of allergies at the end. This is like, no peanuts, no egg, no wheat, no soy, and it just like went on and on.
Yeah.
I was like, well, that's fun.
It reminds me of when I was still like figuring out my illness. I used to like tell people that I had allergies. Like I'd make up stuff like, oh, I have this rare allergy that makes it hard to eat most things. It's like a chemical that's in most foods or something, because I felt like people wouldn't take me seriously if they knew it was a mental illness and not a physical one.
And that's why I want to do this video.
Yeah.
Because technically, like, I didn't choose to have a swallowing disorder, what the heck? So why do people put more crap on people with eating disorders than people who just have food allergies?
Yeah, and I was actually tested for the same disorder as you because they wanted to see if it was physical, and so I had to do a barium swallow study, which I'm sure you had done.
Gross.
But the result of that, when it came back normal, was my mom and the doctors telling me, well, it's all in your head, so you need to eat normal now.
Okay, so let's then transition to what happens if your disorder is triggered.
Okay.
So like what happens in your head or in your body?
Yeah. It's kind of like I freeze up. It's like if a food is put in front of me that I feel like I can't eat, I'll just kind of like stare at it and be like really frozen and locked up.
Now
Like,
what do I do?
yeah, like I don't know what to do with this. Everyone is gonna be staring at me if I don't eat my food. And it just feels like a big, like, what do I do situation, because I can't eat it. It's like my brain is like, that's not edible. I can't put that in my mouth. And nowadays I don't really hang out with people who would like judge me too hard, so like that doesn't really happen anymore. But back in the day, I'd just end up being like, oh, I am full, or like I'd nibble it a little bit and then hope no one would notice. Yeah.
Or like spread it out on your plate so they think
Right.
you're eating it.
An illusion.
You can click the iCard to see my slam poem. It's called Just a Piece of Bread, I think, which is sort of like, what the heck is happening in my head? I'm just supposed to eat this bagel that's on a plate. Why is my brain freaking out about it? So you can go click that if you'd like, but do it at the end of the video. So if I happen to eat something that I cannot, because occasionally it's fun because your allergies can change. So one day I was home alone and I was just eating an apple. You know, I love apples and apple juice. No. My throat was burning. My ears hurt. And it was very difficult to swallow because that's your esophagus basically inflames or something. And so worst case scenario is food can be impacted and I would have to go to the hospital for an emergency endoscopy for them to remove the food. So thankfully that has never happened to me. It just like my throat will burn and I have to stop eating, obviously, because my esophagus is closing. But it's not like regular food allergies, so I can't just like stab myself with an EpiPen and be better. It just goes away with time. So like, okay, I'm done eating now because I can't. That's cheery. So occasionally I'll take Benadryl and just sort of knock myself out so that at least my body will calm down some.
Yeah.
And so that's not very fun. So sometimes, like, I was eating an apple and all of a sudden I felt like I was dying. I was like, panic. And then I avoided apples for a year, but I recently tried an apple and I can eat it and I was very excited. So I have to take caution. So I usually don't try new foods when I go places.
Relatable.
And then it's annoying because I'm also a selective eater. And so people will say, oh, you're allergic to this and this. You can have this salad. And I'm like, I don't like green food. Like, what do you mean you don't like green food? I'm like, no, I like red food. And they'll be like, what is wrong with this person. We just gave them something that they can eat and they refused. Like, just because I have allergies doesn't mean I can't be picky. Like, normal people don't like broccoli or something, so I can't avoid that because I'm allergic to that. So like some things I'm like, oh, I'm allergic, and they'll go, lucky. I'm like, no, that's not how it works, honey.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that on my channel, like more the selective eating side of things, which I don't know when you're gonna end this video, but at the end of it, we can link to that.
I don't have much else to say. I say, looking at my watch. Is there anything you would like to add?
That's a big old question that I didn't think about ahead of time. I guess think about eating disorders as like legitimate issues, because I've learned through having one that there are so many different ones. Like, I didn't know that your thing was a thing until you talked about it, and you can never really tell what someone's going through, so don't judge them based on what they can or cannot eat.
Fantastic. Okay, if you enjoyed this video, you can give it a thumbs up. We are going to head over to Morgan's channel. Links will be in the description to her video and her channel and her Twitter. Sure. And her Twitter. Tweet. And you can click over there to get to her video. And as always, thanks for watching.